Hello, our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to talk about the Arab African Conference for Business Women, when the conference was held, and the activities of the conference, what was held, the exhibition which was held on the sideline of that conference, the importance of hosting such a conference in Egypt, and much more. That would be our topic for discussion for today. And we'll start with this report. The Arab African Conference for the Industrial Products of Business Women was inaugurated in Cairo today. Over 70 companies owned by business women from 25 Arab and African countries are taking part in the conference. Here is a look at the status of African women before we start discussion on that topic with our dear guest in the studio.
African women have been instrumental in shaping African society and are a vital force for growth and development as mothers, sisters, employees, employers, leaders, entrepreneurs, educators, and decision makers. Recent research clearly shows that by not closing the gender pay gap, there are serious worldwide economic consequences. The researchers say that advancing women's equality could add $12 trillion to global growth in just 10 years. It is clear that some progress has been made. Almost 250 million more women are in the worldwide workforce today than a decade ago. In many countries, more women are graduating from universities than men. Yet, despite this, the findings of the latest Global Gender Gap Report are disappointing. Across health, education, economic opportunity, and politics, the gender gap has closed by only 4% in the past 10 years. To improve and accelerate gender equality, the objective of the African Union's much-touted blueprint Agenda 2063 was very clear about where the continent wants to see its women in the next 50 years, included on all levels of Africa's development.
Women in Ivory Coast overwhelmingly approved a new voters in the Ivory Coast overwhelmingly approved a new constitution in a weekend referendum. According to provincial results announced by the Elections Commission on Tuesday, though opposition groups denounced the turnout figures as fraudulent. More details with Samah Sharif.
Ivory Coast's President Alassane Ouattara had argued that the new charter would help the nation turn the page on a decade-long crisis that was capped by a 2011 civil war and create the stability needed to cement its status as Africa's rising economic star. The results showed about 93% of voters backed the text on a turnout of around 42%. There was no turnout threshold for the vote to be deemed valid. Opposition leaders had called for a boycott of the vote, branding the constitution a ploy to further entrench Ouattara's political coalition. Some urged their supporters to disrupt the process. The boycott meant there had been little doubt about the outcome, and the focus was on turnout as the key measure of whether there was broad public support for the new constitution. The current constitution, drafted under military rule after a 1999 coup, was at the heart of Ivory Coast's prolonged unrest. In its most controversial clause, it says presidential candidates' parents must both be natural-born Ivorians, a swipe at northerners, many of whom, like Ouattara, have family ties that straddle the borders with Burkina Faso and Mali. The new constitution scraps the rule which was used to disqualify Ouattara from a poll in 2000, and now only one parent must be Ivorian. It creates a post of vice president and a senate. The president says all these new measures will guarantee more political stability. The new text also allows future changes to the constitution to go ahead without a referendum and with a two-thirds majority in parliament, a body now dominated by Ouattara's allies. The results of the referendum must now be validated by the Constitutional Court.
Welcome back, our dear viewers, and now to shed more light about the Arab African Conference for Business Women, we are very much delighted to have with us in the studio our dear guest, Ambassador Soad Shalaby. She is the previous former secretary for the foreign minister, Assistant Foreign Minister. Hello, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Ambassador Soad, can you tell us what topped the agenda of the conference today?
Today there was this very important conference and exhibition, which was under the patronage of His Excellency, the President of the country, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and it was inaugurated. It was actually under the Arab League also. It was not only under the patronage of President Sisi, but also the Arab League. And also it was organized by the Arab Council for Business Women and the Arab African Union for Business Women, and also the Arab Union for Industrial Development. There are 29 Arab and African countries represented, and there are many issues that have to deal in these 3 days. It started today, but it will continue for the next 2 days in order to discuss the importance of supporting women and the economic empowerment of women in the field of industrial development. Because as you know, that economic development is based on many things, mainly industry, entrepreneurship, and many private sector. And so women play a big role in the field of industrial development. And that is why this conference has shed light on how to empower women in the field of economic development and mainly industrial development. Of course, investing in women is much more rewarding, especially in the field of entrepreneurship, because women have the impact of investment rewarding. Because of the impact on society, her children and the family and the society itself, they all benefit from the rewards of investment, and it has been proven by statistics that the investment in the gender equality, and especially in women entrepreneurship is very important, even in the villages, because in the villages there are many women who resort to very simple industrial products that can be marketed. And in this conference there was representatives from COMESA, and COMESA is 19 countries in East and South Africa, and they have their business women organization, and of course COMESA is promoting trade and investment in Africa, and also it empowers women in the field of industrial economic and industrial empowerment.
Ambassador Soad, how would you describe the development of women empowerment in Africa and in the Arab world?
Well, of course, this has been a new trend for women in Africa and the Arab world, and of course it has been always the men who had been in the business sector, but now we see that even in the Gulf countries where women are not so much involved in the society, they have a say now. And actually, Sheikha Hissa was a part of this conference, and she has been influenced today. Everybody was mentioning her as one of the great businesswomen from the Gulf area. So we find that in the Arab League is supporting the Businesswomen Association, and also the Ambassador Talawi, who is the president of the Organization for Arab Women, is also supporting this trend for supporting Arab women to become businesswomen, even if they are on a small scale. But it is very good to have, for instance, to empower them by the laws and by the regulations, by the system in the countries in the Arab world, that there should be gender equality in supporting businesses. In the African continent, it is the same, because, as you know, there are a lot of economic entities that are affiliated to the African Union, and the African Union is supporting also gender equality, especially in the Agenda 2063, which is based on the Sustainable Development Goals, which the UN calls for, and which have a top priority, how to balance the women and men in Africa and in the Arab world, how to give the women the role, the priority, the business support in order to become to play a bigger role in their societies. Yes. So we find that the African Union, the Economic Commission for Africa, the Women Business Associations, all are focusing on supporting and empowering women in the field of industrial products.
Ambassador Soad, what benefits would the conference offer to the participants from the Arab and African states?
This is a very good opportunity for networking, for one-on-one deals that they get together in Cairo. They showed in the exhibition there are a lot of products, very nicely finished products that are women.
The exhibition which is held on the sidelines.
On the sidelines of the conference. There is an exhibition for the next 2-3 days. It is open to public, and everybody is very much interested to see how the African women, the Arab women are displaying their products.
Interesting products, Ambassador Soad, I believe.
Yes.
Especially the African products are quite interesting.
In the fashion, they are beautiful fashion.
Beautiful colors.
Yes, beautiful colors, beautiful materials. And they have very nice jewelry. They have also, they use the natural products that they have. It is very interesting to see how each country is displaying its own products, and from the point of view of women, of course.
And that's a kind of encouragement also to women who are working in the field of industry, the small and medium enterprise.
Exactly, yes. There will be many discussions, workshops that will discuss what are the problems that face women and what are the challenges that face women in the marketing, in the advertisement, in the media, in the how can the regulations help the private sector, and how the financial systems, that the loans, the banks, the funding, a lot of people are gathered in these couple of days in order to help the women to solve the problems that they that face them in the production.
Ambassador, how important is it to create somehow a cooperation between African and Arab women, especially in the business field and industry?
Well, this is one of the, there was, last year there was another conference in Addis Ababa, and it prepared for this conference. So there are many opportunities when Arab women, Arab business women and African business women meet. And this is how they can discuss them and they can get together. So in exhibitions, in meetings like this, in conferences, in many forums that combine these, so they know each other personally, and at the same time they can exchange products and they can exchange experiences, because because mainly you can see that all Arab countries and African countries are developing countries, so they need the expertise, they need the technique. So when they get together, they exchange these experiences, and so they benefit from each other. So it's not only the that they can see it in on the internet, or they can see the pictures. It's the main thing is to meet face to face and to make deals together when they are meeting each other.
The event or the conference is held under the theme Women's Economic Empowerment through Industrial Development.
That's right.
How are women contributing in the industrial development in their countries, in Africa and in the Arab world? And I do believe that maybe the African women are doing much development in that field more than the Arab women.
Well, I can tell you that the Economic Commission for Africa and the ILO are helping these women in Africa to train them how to become young entrepreneurs. How can they export their goods? How can they finance their projects? So many of the African women small businesses are flourishing because of the help and the training and the contacts they are making. So it is, I mean, has a role to play because they look up to Egypt. They always see that Egypt is much more industrialized, much more advanced, much more connected to the world. So we have a role to play, and that is to reach our hands to our sisters in Africa, to encourage them to export to Egypt, and also our products can be exported. So it is vice versa. It's a benefit for all.
Ambassador Soad, the conference is mainly focusing on the startups and startups for the SMEs.
Yes.
To what extent these SMEs could help in developing the African economy?
Well, I think this is the future for developing countries and even for developed countries. Because I remember last year, even the United States, Obama has inaugurated a big conference, international conference for SMEs and for startups. In Singapore, for instance, they are teaching kids to start a business. So now the world has changed. It's not about looking for a job. It's about how you can make use of your resources, how you can, and this is what we are doing now in Africa and in the Arab world. We are trying to teach the women who are in the villages and who are in, who don't have a job, actually to use their own resources in order to become small entrepreneurs. How to start up. How this needs to.
But what about the funding?
They need funding, of course, and there are sources of funds. A lot of banks are offering for SMEs.
But what are the legitimate channels that these women could use in order to get the required funding?
Yeah, there are many
projects?
systems there are cooperatives, there are small loans with very low interest. There is of course, there is the social fund that offers funding. There are many, even the small system, the old system of jam'iyya that we used to do. Yeah, each one pays something every month, and then when they sell the product, they give back. So it is starting even the funding without a system, like a complicated system of financing. It is starting in Africa because of the distances also between one place and the other. So they are using their local currency, and they are using their families and the communities in order to grow their products and to buy extra financing from themselves. So it is like regenerating their own fund.
Ambassador Soad, how are the NGOs promoting the concept of women empowerment in both Africa and the Arab world?
The NGOs have a role because, as I said, we cannot depend on the government in everything. So the NGOs are the representatives of the communities, of the society. They know what the problems are, and they try to bridge the gap between the communities and the market, so they see where to help, whether to train, whether to find the financing, whether to empower the women by education, by health, So these NGOs are very important, especially for the places where they don't have access to education.
Indeed. Ambassador Soad, what are still the major challenges which are hindering the development of women in Africa and in the Arab world, especially the women who are willing to have some startups and to have their own projects here or small industries?
Well, as you know, poverty, of course, is very difficult. To eradicate poverty is very difficult, and especially when there are conflicts in many African countries, and now in Arab countries there is refugees problems, there are wars, and there are conflicts, there are instability, and many women and families, they are the ones who suffer. And that is why we want to put to give women a bigger role in even peace, like mediation. They have to learn how to deal with the conflicts that they are in. They have to play a bigger role in mediation, in negotiation, and that is why we train them in the Cairo Regional Center, for instance, for peacekeeping and conflict resolution in Africa. We train Africans to become leaders in their society. So how to get over poverty, how to get over how to become educated and trained to face the challenges of society. It's not easy to become an entrepreneur or to trade without a peace prevailing in your community. So it is a big role that even the women have to play in order to stabilize their society and not to have conflicts, because conflicts, those who suffer are the women and the children and the families. So that is why I'm asking to, and this conference will shed light on this also.
It's very important.
Yes, how to prevail peace, how can peace prevail in societies in order to empower women to have industrial development.
Indeed. Ambassador Soad Shalaby, former assistant to the foreign minister, thank you very much for being our guest and for your precious input about today's conference for Arab and African businesswomen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Hope you have enjoyed it, and until we meet again, I'm Soad Shalaby, signing off.